Hello everybody, I'm Topher Morrison. Welcome to the Speaker Training Webinar Series. We have every week a new topic, and we are today talking about how to get booked by promoters. You know, one of the things that I have all the time where people come up to me and they ask me how it is that I've got my promoters to book me. So I'm going to share with you guys the ins and the outs and the tricks and the secrets on how to do that today. I've got a lot of information to share. I'm going to go through it as quickly as I possibly can because if you're anything like me, you have a busy schedule, so I don't want to waste any of your time. Having said that, let's go through a little bit of the protocol today. This is an interactive webinar. You can ask me any question you like, and if I like the question, I'll answer it. I'm kidding. I'll answer actually all of your questions. Now, I may or may not answer your question on the actual webinar. There may be reasons why I don't choose to answer your question. Maybe it might be a long answer, and so I think it'd be better to just address it individually. It also might be such a niched or specific question that really nobody else listening to the call would benefit from it other than you. And in that situation, what I'll do is I'll just simply respond via email, a private email to you directly, answering your question. Of course, the other reason that I might not answer it is because I don't see the question. So if they're coming in fast and furious, I'm not obviously going to be able to get to them all. Another reason why I might is you might actually be listening to a rebroadcast of this depending upon your time zone. But the cool thing about this webinar series is that even if you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can actually still ask me all the questions you want. Enter them in there. They will be recorded with the ones that have already been on the original broadcast, and what will happen is I'll get an email with all of your questions, and I'll make sure I respond to each one of them individually. So it's kind of a cool deal. Whether you're listening to the live or the rebroadcast, you're in good hands. You're going to be able to ask whatever questions you want, and rest assured you are going to have your question answered. Whether it's during the webinar or not, though, remains to be seen. And so there we go. So what are we going to talk about today? What we're going to talk about are a couple of things here. Number one is the 3 things that promoters want in a speaker. There are, and I forgot to turn my phone off. Sorry about that. Guess I better turn it down here. There we go. There's 3 things that promoters are looking for anytime they book a speaker. Now, this is not necessarily something that every single promoter looks for. This is just my experience in terms of the people that I've used in the past. What are they looking for? What do they want? So that's really the area that I'm going to cover. We're also going to cover, by the way, the 2 reasons why they won't book you. And sometimes that's even more valuable because what I've noticed is I see a lot of speakers going about getting a promoter all the wrong ways. So we're going to talk about how you can avoid looking like a fool and asking them the wrong questions or in the wrong way. In addition to that, some of you guys are going to be able to receive my best-selling program here today called The Mental Game of Life, absolutely free. This normally sells on my website. I believe it is for $767.50, and that's the sale price, by the way. I think it's normally like $895. The 10 DVD set. Some of you guys are going to be able to chance to actually get that whole product for free, so it's a pretty cool deal. And then last but not least, I'm going to have an open frame question and answer where you can ask me anything that you want about speaking. It does not necessarily have to be related to the topic of getting a promoter specifically. So there we go. Let's jump right into it right now, and we are going to have a lot of fun. If you have a question, by the way, just type it in. Don't wait till the end. Just go and put it in there now. And what I might do is I might answer the question now. I might answer it later. Sometimes the questions from the people attending the webinar actually remind me about something I forgot to talk about. So I really do appreciate your questions as they come in. And if I don't answer it directly, like I said, it's because I didn't see it, or I know I'm going to answer it a little bit later. So just be patient and we will get to it. So having said that, let's talk about the 3 key traits that promoters are looking for. And like I said, I'm going to do my best to give you guys a lot of powerful, concise information in the quickest amount of time. This webinar with the question and answer will go no more than 60 minutes because I said I have an appointment in 60 minutes, so I've got to make sure I'm out as well. All right, here we go. So what are they? The first thing is attractability, meaning you have to have that certain something that a promoter will know will drive sales to their event. Do you have that spark? Do you have that energy that allows the promoter to know, if I book this person, I can guarantee or I can count on some additional sales inside the program. The next thing is variability. And variability all has everything to do with, do you have more than just one thing that you can talk about, still though within the niche that you talk about? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about niches as well. And then the third thing is salability. Do you have the ability to sell products or seminars at that event. Make no mistake, the speaking business has two words in it, speaking and business. And if you don't know how to do the sales portion, then the business side is very weak. So we're going to talk about those three aspects. So let's break them down here. Let's talk about attractability. What is attractability? It really has everything to do with the fact that a promoter needs to know that when they agree to pay you a speaking fee, or if there's another arrangement where they're putting you onto their platform and then you get to sell and they take a split. That's also a very popular thing going on now, by the way, which, by the way, the most popular way at this point in time is the promoter will let you pay for all of your expenses for the privilege to get up on their stage, and then they will take half of all your sales. We actually have a separate webinar for how to negotiate that deal and why, if you accept a 50-50 split, you're an amateur and a fool. All right, so make sure you tune into that webinar as well. It's called How to Negotiate with Promoters. So anyway, getting back onto this though, they really want to make sure that when they book you, they can count on a certain number of ticket sales just by your namesake. So how does that happen? It usually starts by making sure that you have a platform. Now, when I say a platform, what I mean by that is you have a current list of people or a current fan base that is loyal and dedicated to you, that when you come into that city or when you get up onto that stage, you know that there's enough people who have been treated well by you, that have liked your services to where they say, look, if this guy's coming in town or if this lady's coming in town, I want to see her speak. So they're going to ask you, how large is your platform? And by the way, your platform really is kind of like your database is another way to look at that. So for example, when a person like, especially in the UK, calls me, if I have like Daniel Priestley from Triumphant Events or Dan Bradbury, when those guys call me, one of the first questions out of their mouth is, or at least in the beginning was, what's your database like? How many people do you have on the database? If you go up to a promoter and you say, I have 0 people on my database and I'd like you to put me onto your stage, there's very little motivation for them to do that. So then the next question becomes, of course, how do I build my database? That will be for another webinar, and we're going to talk about how to build that up. But one of the easiest ways to do that, is through building up your social media. That essentially is a database as well. So they may ask you questions like, how large is your database and how many social media pages do you have? How many fans do you have? The first thing they'll probably do is go to your social media pages and just look and see, does this person have 200 fans or 2,000 fans or 20,000 fans? So you do need to make sure that you really foster and market your social media pages. One of the easiest ways to do that is to just do paid ads, for example, like on Facebook. At the time of this webinar, at least, that seems to be one of the most powerful ones. And you know what, maybe we should even do a webinar. Let me know, just leave me a comment, yay or nay, if you'd like me to do a webinar on how to build a big social networking site as well. What I might do is go find an expert and bring them on the line for a future webinar. So just go and feel free to put a comment there and let me know if that seems like something you'd like. I can tell right now we're getting some good comments, so maybe we'll put that on the list of things to put in this webinar training series. But you definitely need to foster your social media and your fan book pages. The next thing also, of course, is YouTube views. So, do you have a YouTube channel? And if you have a YouTube channel, how many people have viewed your videos? If a promoter goes onto your YouTube videos and they see that you've had 38 views, that's not going to be very attractive to a promoter. So in that situation, once again, you might be interested in actually paying for YouTube views, paying for advertising to get your videos higher up on YouTube to where more people watch them. The notion of, I want to have a huge list and a big following, and I'm not willing to pay anything in order to get that, is a notion for the poor. This is a business, and every single successful business in the world, without exception, has a certain amount of money that they allocate toward advertising and marketing. So you have to have that. So just if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't want to pay for YouTube views or I don't want to pay for social media ads, well then, get out of the business and go find something where you can work for somebody who, you don't have to do that stuff. But if you want to run a speaking business, folks, you have to have a marketing budget. So you have to be willing to invest a certain amount of money into that stuff. And these are great ways to do that. So make sure that you do get those views up, because if I'm a promoter and I go to your YouTube page and I see that you've got 14 views on one video, 48 views on another video, I'm immediately going to go, this person does not have the attractability that I want. So you have to get those views up. If you don't, it is not going to work. Another thing that you want to look into is, do you have any endorsements from people who are famous or mildly famous? In other words, this is a small world. And at the moment you go to a promoter and the second that they start to consider having you up on their stage, I can promise you this, first thing they're going to do is they're going to call up the other speakers that they are relying on, and they always ask them, what do you think about this person? What do you know about him? For example, here's a great one. Dan Bradbury out in London, who is probably one of my top customers in terms of he hires me more than just about anybody. The guy's always on the phone with me, even when I'm not booked to speak at his events. By the way, he'll call me up and say, "What do you know about so and so? Have you heard anything? Do you like this person?" Or sometimes he might not even have a person. He might go, "Hey, do you know anybody in this area who you think would be really good?" And he will oftentimes base speakers or book speakers sight unseen solely on my endorsement and my recommendation. And that's a pretty big thing, by the way. So, because you figure, by the way, if a promoter trusts your opinion enough to where they'll book a speaker sight unseen on your endorsement, then they must hold you in fairly high regard. And so we're going to talk about that as well, because one of the best ways to get a promoter to book you is to become a source of reliability for that promoter. So, and we'll get into this in terms of, how you ruin it a little bit later, because most people just go up to promoters saying with the attitude of give me, give me, give me. Well, that's the wrong thing. You want to actually go up there with how can I give, how can I give, how can I give? So anyway, famous endorsements, either through other speakers or through celebrities, politicians, things like that. The more people you have booking you or endorsing you or backing you, I should say, the better off you're going to be. Let's see here. So any other questions? There's another question here. Do you think it's necessary to be a published author for a promoter to want to do business? I'm not going to really talk about that here. That's really more about, are you a key person of influence in your business? There's an issue there, but to become a key person of influence, which is a phrase that I stole from Daniel Priestley or borrowed or whatever. He's got a great program. Triumph Events has a thing called Key Person of Influence, which if you have not done it, by the way, you're a fool. You really should go to the Triumph Events website, sign up for their Key Person of Influence program. By all means, tell them I sent you. I don't know if they'll give you a better deal or put you in the corner because they know you're going to be a troublemaker if I sent you. But nonetheless, feel free to use my name and say, hey, Topher said really great things about you, because they really do have an amazing product there. And inside Key Person of Influence, by the way, they really do promote the aspect of being an author. So your question, Alex, is do you think it's necessary? My answer to that is yes. I don't think necessary. Yeah, you know what? I think it is necessary. I think before you go to a promoter, you better have done your groundwork and make sure that you have a book out. Because I guarantee you right now, out of everybody that's listening to this webinar, probably, if I go conservatively, I'll say 95% of you have said this phrase more than once to somebody. I'm currently working on a book. Well, I got news for you, by the way. There's only two types of people in the world. There's people who have a book and people who are working on a book. And they're rarely the same people. So folks, you can sit there and talk about how you're working on a book all day long. Just shut up and write it, okay, and get it done. The days of writing a book and having it become a New York Times best-selling book, which allows you to retire off of it for the rest of your life, those days are dead, by the way. Books nowadays are really expensive brochures that help you to broaden your base and make yourself more attractable. So, yep, you do need to have a book written. And, nowadays there's so many easy, and by the way, when I say a book, I don't mean an ebook. There's also two types of authors in the world. There's real authors and then virtual authors. Anybody can be a virtual author nowadays. So the prestige factor for having an ebook is almost zero, if not zero. It's not a big deal. You need to have your book in print. At least at the time of this webinar, it's still very popular. We're going more and more to the digital age. Ebooks are becoming more and more popular, yes. And if there's one product, which is a physical product, which will outlast all the others, it's probably going to be a book. And I think that has something to do with just the religious connotation of all of the great works of literature were in printed form. So we still revere that to be a big thing. So you do need to get your book printed on physical pages and have that as a way of even sending it out as a gift to the promoters as well. So, kind of a spin-off on that question, goes into the fifth column, which is, are you a key person of influence? And check out Dan Priestley's thing. Check it out. It's amazing. Triumphantevents.co.uk, I think, is our website. And just check out Key Person of Influence. It's a good program. Make sure I tell them I sent you. All right. So anyway, those are the aspects that allow you to be attractable to a promoter. And if you cannot tick at least the first 4 boxes, the 5th box, by the way, kind of happens when you become a promoter, or sorry, when you become promoted by promoters. But the more you have that aspect already, the better off you're going to be. All right, so that's the attractability issue on there. Let's go on to variability. So variability has everything to do with making sure that you are not a one-trick pony. Now, there's a difference between, by the way, being a one-trick pony and being someone who is an expert in one thing. So there's a big difference there. So let's talk about the difference between being a one-trick pony and an expert in one thing. So variability means how deep is your knowledge base? In other words, you're a specialist in something. And by the way, maybe I should also say this. Here's the thing, folks. This is going to be something that pisses a lot of you off and you're not going to like to hear. But this is the God's honest truth. And if you listen to me now, you're going to be grateful in the next 5 years. If you ignore what I'm about to tell you, you will struggle and probably fail in this business within the next 2 to 5 years. So please listen to this. This could be the most important thing I can tell you during the entire program. Are you ready? If you want to become the next Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Bob Proctor, whoever it is, all of the greats, if you want to become the next great in the motivational personal development business, you are destined to fail. How's that for a motivational speech? And here's why. You have to look at the market and you have to look at culture and realize that the reason why those guys hit such a level of fame and success that they did was because they got in at the right time, at the right place, with the right message. Keep in mind, when people like Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins and all those guys got into the business, there wasn't anybody telling us what they told us. So what happened was, back then, we didn't have the access to information that we have now. So if we had a very specific problem in life, we could hear a generic answer, and we would take the generic answer to our specific problem, and we would be satisfied. So I'll use an example. So just about all of those speakers that I just mentioned, they talked somewhere in their repertoire of goal setting, and you have to have goal setting. So if you had a specific problem in your business, here's the solution to making your business more successful. Goals. You have to have goals, and here's how you set goals, all right? And then if you had problems in your relationships, they could say, well, the problem with your relationships is there's no focus. You don't have any goals. You have to have goals in your relationships. You have to have objectives and outcomes. And you know, if you're physically unfit, it's because you don't have any goals for fitness. You have to set goals. Here's how you set goals. And everybody would go, I love goal setting. It's great. Okay, well, guess what? You know what? We're a more sophisticated world now, and we all get it. We know it. Okay, yeah, we got to set goals. Nobody's willing to pay to hear you tell us how to set goals anymore. I'm sorry. That's just a fact. It's already been done. So, and the reason for that is because our culture now will no longer tolerate a generic answer or a generic solution to a specific problem. Nowadays, we request, we demand specific answers to specific problems. This webinar is not called How to Succeed as a Professional Speaker. It's called How to Get Booked by a Promoter. Now, the interesting thing is, by the way, I probably could have actually said How to Succeed as a Professional Speaker, and I could have given you the exact same advice, but it will attract the wrong people. I want to know people that are on this website want one answer specifically, which is how do I get a promoter to put me on their stage? So I'm giving you a specific answer to a specific problem. This is what people are willing to pay for nowadays. Think about it. If you're sick, you don't get onto Google and go, I'm sick. Doctor in my city. You don't do that. What you do is you go on and you enter your symptoms. You know, I have green snot dripping out of my nose and a cough, whatever, right? And then you go to WebMD and you get the specific solution to your specific problem. So please, right now, I'm begging you guys, if you have aspirations or desires to become the next Tony Robbins, just get rid of it, okay? And get real and realize that you need to have a better solution, a more specific solution to a specific problem. Now, here comes the irony. Are you ready for this? Once you have a specific solution to a specific problem, it's probably the same thing that Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and Tom Hopkins and all those guys say anyway, right? But now you just throw some adjectives around it. You make it specific to your business. So, I hope that didn't depress you guys, but I do want it to wake you up to the reality that times are changing and you have to have a completely different strategy now. You know, the reason those guys got in, nobody else was doing it. Now competition is more fierce than ever. People are trying to get in this business more than ever. There's never been a greater supply of motivational speakers and a lower level of demand. And anytime that's the case, my friend, your odds are against you. You better make sure that you are an expert in something. So how deep is your knowledge base has everything to do with how well do you know about the one topic you talk about. So for example, in my business, the only thing I talk about is how to become a professional speaker. My expertise is on mass communications. I don't deal with one-on-one communication. I don't deal with relationships. If you want to learn how to take your message to the masses, I'm your guy. I can show you how to be successful in your interviews. I can show you how to interview people successfully. I can train you on how to read a teleprompter. I can tell you the difference between platform skills between a live audience and platform skills between a virtual audience. And all of these things are my variabilities. I could do an entire day's training on how to speak to a live audience. I could do an entire day's training on how to speak to a camera. I could do an entire day's training on how to read a teleprompter. I could do an entire day's training on how to be a great interviewer. I could do an entire day's training on how to be interviewed greatly. I could do an entire day's training on how to get booked by a promoter. I could do an entire day's training on the 10 biggest blunders that speakers make when they try to get into business. And I can keep going and going and going. I mean, to give you an idea of my knowledge base, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I'm just trying to give you an idea of how deep it has to go. I have a program called Legacy, which is a speaker training course. Now, we've modified it since, but it used to be a 2-week program, 8-hour to 10-hour days, and I never repeated myself once. I could probably talk about the notion of mass communications or professional speaking. I could probably talk for a month straight and never repeat myself. So as a result, when a promoter looks at me, they know that I'm not a one-trick pony. They know that I'm not going to be able to come in and just do how do you, motivate an audience. But there's going to be a mass level of programs that they can do, all under the same banner of mass communications or professional speaking. I've got that banner, but I've got lots of different topics underneath that. And that's really what you want to do. So if you are an expert in, for example, social media. Let's go even more specific. Let's say you're an expert in being a Facebook social media expert. Okay, great. How deep is your knowledge base with regard to Facebook? What's the difference between fan pages versus events? How do you do mass mailings to lists versus to groups? What's the best type of ad to create for Facebook? How do you embed videos into your face? All of these things are little topics that you should be able to speak for a good hour, if not more, on. And then you've got several different programs that this promoter can say, listen, if I bring in this expert on Facebook, this event, I can have them talk about video-based trainings on Facebook. But then the next time I do it, I can bring them back and I can talk about how to build up a mailing list. And they have all these different levels. So you have to have that level of variability. The next thing, of course, is how many products or events within your niche. So when we talk about your knowledge base, have you converted those into products? So I have a one-day media training program. I have a one-day program called 7 Secrets to Becoming a Highly Paid Professional Speaker. I have a 7-day program called Legacy Speaker Training, which has 3 different levels in that. I have a video program called 7 Secrets to Become a Professional Speaker. I'm coming out with a new video program for how to speak in front of the media. Now, for example, I've got these webinars on speaker training as well. So there's so many different products / events out there that I can keep going and going and going, and a promoter knows that they're not going to run out of content with me, which is an important thing. And then the other thing to look about is how many industries does your topic work with? So, for example, when you are when you're an expert in something, does that expertise carry over into sales for cars? Does it carry over into the mortgage industry? Does it carry over into the financial industry? Does it carry over to the personal development, into nursing, into the medical? Can you take your topic and carry it into different industries as well? That could be a big thing as well, because what you got to remember is promoters talk to other promoters. So, for example, Daniel Priestley, here's a great example. Daniel Priestley does not involve himself in personal development. He involves himself in entrepreneurial development. So everything that Daniel Priestley with Triumphant Events does in the UK has to do with helping foster the growth of entrepreneurs. He's not into personal development. So if he gets a speaker who's really great, who also has some personal development, he might then contact another promoter, for example, like Richard Tan, and say, hey, here's a person who's really good and they've got a great motivational seminar, and since you really work in the personal development arena, maybe you should give this person a call. And they will talk back and forth as well. This is a very, very small business, by the way. If you do great with one, you can do great with them all. If you screw up with one, you've probably screwed up with all. So just ask yourself, how many industries can it go over to? Because that could make a big difference as well. All right. See if there's any other questions here. I saw an interesting question come through. I think it was from Sandeep. Said, Andy Harrington told me that he can get me on stage with Richard Branson. Can you do that? Sandeep, I doubt very seriously that Andy Harrington told you that he can get you on stage with Richard Branson. Chances are what he said was he knows how to get on stage with Richard Branson, and he can show you how to do that as well, which you've misinterpreted as he can show you how to do it, or he can get you on stage. There's a difference between showing you how to get on stage and actually getting you on stage. I know Andy, and I don't think that he would actually promise anybody. Yes, Andy is famous for making some pretty bold claims, but I don't think he'd make that big and that bold of a claim that he will say, buy my product and I'll get you on stage. I don't know. I can't speak on his behalf, but I kind of doubt that. So to answer your question half-heartedly here, listen, if you're asking me, do I know how to get on stage with Richard Branson? The answer to the question is yes. There's several different ways. Andy knows one way, by the way, and it works great for people who are really good at selling. If selling is not your strategy, then Andy's strategy could be very dangerous for you, which basically is, a lot of, for example, the Richard Branson series, or the one-day seminars where Richard speaks. Most commonly, if a speaker wants to get on stage, they have to pay the promoter for the privilege to get up on stage. So when Andy, and I can't speak on all of them, I do know for a fact that on the ones that I've heard about, he's paid to get up on that stage. So he gives them a fee, and it's not my business to say how much he's paid, but it's dear. So he pays to get up on stage. So they know, regardless of whether he bombs or kicks butt on sales, they're walking away with a certain amount of money. And then also he agrees to pay them, I'm pretty sure it's half of everything that he sells on there as well. And I think if you're good at selling from the stage, that's a smart business move for you. But I also know people who have followed that strategy, paid to get up on stage, they sucked at selling, and they ended up walking away with about $100,000 to $200,000 loss as a result of getting up on stage with Richard Branson. There are other ways as well. There are different tiered levels for speakers with those one-day events. They have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. A Tier 1 speaker will be paid to speak on stage. So, for example, Richard Branson is paid to get up on stage. So he doesn't have to sell anything. He just gets up, he rocks out, and he collects a check. That's a Tier 1 speaker. A Tier 2 speaker is somebody who will not get paid to speak, but will not have to pay to speak. They have a certain level of attractability. They have a deep enough knowledge base. They're skilled enough, have a great enough reputation that the promoters for Richard's company says, hey, this person would be good to have on the ticket with Richard, but we also know that we don't have to pay him simply because Richard's there. That works out pretty well as well. Then there's the Tier 3 speaker, which is the majority of the speakers who get up on stage, and those people have to pay for the privilege to get up on that stage, and that's what Andy does. At least at the time of this recording, that's how I know his strategy is. Whether Andy's reached the level of Tier 2 or not, I don't know. I don't think so, not at this point in time, but who knows. So Sandeep, your question is, do you want to get on stage or do you want to be paid? I've had Tier 3 and Tier 2 offers to share the stage with Richard Branson. So when I've had the promoters call me and say, look, here's the deal, we can get you up on stage, you have to pay this amount, I just walk away and say, no, thank you. I'm a professional speaker, by the way, and the difference between me, my thinking is the difference between a public speaker versus a professional speaker is very important. A public speaker has to pay for the privilege to get up on stage, whereas a professional speaker gets paid for the honor to get up on stage. I'm a professional speaker. I don't pay anybody to get up on stage. If you want me to speak for you, you have to pay me. Now, how you get paid, there's lots of different ways, and that's a completely different webinar, so we're getting a little bit off topic here. I just saw another question. Will you endorse my book for me? Akash, no, I will not endorse your book for you. I've never read it. I don't do blind endorsements. By the way, you want to make sure that you tune in to my webinar called The 10 Biggest Blunders That Professional Speakers Make, because you just committed one of them. Never go up and just ask somebody to do something for you. Same thing with Will. Will you introduce me to Dan Bradbury? I have a program that I know would add tremendous value to his conferences. You've actually made two big blunders there. One is you've asked me for something without offering me something, and number two is you've confused Dan Bradbury's motivation for wanting to book you. He doesn't care if you add tremendous value to his conference. He cares about something else. That is a factor, but it's not the only one. So Anyway, I think we've derailed here a little bit. These are great questions. I should probably save these things for the end, though. All right, so we talked about variability. You have to be an expert in one area, and you have to have multiple topics around that. The third thing is the salability issue. So salability is, do you know how to sell your products up on stage? So what are your close ratios? When you call a promoter, you hopefully have had some. I'll tell you right now, by the way, if you've never got up on stage before, don't bother calling a promoter. Okay, they're not going to book you. Period. Unless you're a celebrity. All of this advice, by the way, is for what we call non-celebrity speakers. There's no way a promoter is going to book you as a non-celebrity speaker if you've never got up on stage before. So you really need to make sure that when you start getting up on stage from day one, you start to track your close ratios. And you want to do that for two reasons. Number one, you want to be able to go to your promoter and say, listen, here's my close ratio. I close 30% of the room, or I average $500 per head. By the way, I prefer per head versus percentage. I think it's a little bit more accurate, but you should probably have both of those information. So I know what my close ratios are on average when I get up in front of an audience. Here's why that's important. It's important because then the promoter can budget or forecast how much money they can make off of you. So for example, let's say you have a product that you sell for £1,000 a piece, or $1,000 a piece, or €1,000 per package. And let's say you have an average, and out of like maybe 100 people, let's say you sell 10 packages. So you're pretty good at doing about a 10% close ratio to an audience. Now that's going to average out to $10,000. There were 100 people, so that averages out to, what is that, $100 per head, I think. I hope. Math is not my forte. So if you have $100 per head average, there's 100 people in the room. Let's see, that's 100. Yeah, that's 10,000. Okay, there we go. I did it right. So you can go to a promoter and say, listen, here's the deal. I average about $100 per head in sales. So they go, okay, well, I'm expecting 500 people. If he does $100 per person, we can expect he's going to do 50,000 in sales. I want to do a 50-50 split. This person doesn't know how to negotiate, so they're desperate and they're going to accept that because they didn't go to Topher's webinar on how to negotiate with me. So I know that if I put them up on my stage, I can expect to make $25,000 or pounds or euros or whatever. That's really good information for a promoter, and that's what's going to be attractive to them. They want to know, to be able to forecast how much money can I make with them. You all should know, by the way, if you do better with small or large audiences, so you know what types of promoters to go for. I typically sell better to smaller audiences. I typically don't sell as good with large audiences. However, I'm more entertaining with large audiences than I am with small audiences. So I know this, and as a result of me knowing this, number one, I also know what gigs to accept. See, here's the thing. Not only is the percentage and the per head information important for your promoter, it's important for you as well, because you want to be able to know, for example, using the example that I just did a moment ago, that if that person puts 100 people in the room, or 500 people in the room, or 1,000 people in the room, that you can expect to make a certain amount of money, especially if you have to do some type of a commission split where there's no speaker's fee up front. So to give you an example, at the time that this webinar is being made, my speaking fee, depending upon the environment and the organization and whatnot, but just like a flat keynote speaking fee for me in the U.S., which doesn't require international travel, overnight accommodations, and all that kind of stuff. So everything's a little bit different, right? But if you just want me to come out, do a keynote, 45 minutes, and then come home, that's $12,500 for a 45-minute speech. So now if I get a company who calls me up and says, well, we're not willing to pay you your speaking fee, but we do have 10,000 people in the audience, and we'll let you sell your product. Well, then I don't want my speaking fee, because quite frankly, with 1,000 people in the room, with me selling my product, and I know I can average out of that 1,000 people, 250 to 300 of those people will sign up for my speaker training membership site, and that's $47 a piece, and that's a monthly carryover, and I know what the attrition rate is. I know that if I go out and I speak at that event, and I give them a split, which is never 50-50 for me, by the way, I know that I can still end up walking away with $30,000 to $40,000 as a result of that speaking fee. So I don't want my speaking fee. I'd rather get my sales. You need to know your percentages and your per head amount. And whether or not you do better with small or large crowds. And then also, by the way, this is really important, what's your reputation for selling? So here's a great example. Somebody mentioned Andy Harrington earlier. One of the reasons why Dan Bradbury loves to book Andy Harrington is because he is the master at selling from the stage. I don't say he's the master at it, because I think there's actually two people who do a better job than he does, but I can't take anything away from him. If you put me up on stage against Andy Harrington, he will outsell me every single day of the week. And the reason for that is he's a better salesman. I'm not a better salesman. I'm a better speaker. He's a better salesman. We have our strengths. We have our weaknesses. It is what it is. We need to know what those are and be aware of them so we can maximize our strengths, minimize our weaknesses. So here's the thing. Andy has a great reputation for being able to close the crap out of people on the stage. He's really, really good at that. He can create that mad rush to where people run to the back of the room and pull out their credit cards and buy, buy, buy. So Dan looks at him and he knows, listen, if I book Andy Harrington at my event, I know I can guarantee a certain amount of income coming in. And by the way, Andy has that reputation now. So when he calls up a promoter, he can sit there and say, look, do you have any idea how much I can make you? And then ultimately it's a business. So the promoter goes, yeah, that's true. I would like to make that amount of money. And they know that if they bring him in, he's going to make a lot more money than somebody else, for example, like me. But there's other strengths that I have as well. So what is your reputation? What are you known for? Having said that, for example, to give you a contrast, the reason why Dan Bradbury brings me out, and he asked me to speak at nearly every one of, I can't say everyone because who knows, but so far for the past 2 years, he's booked me at every one of his events. And he pays me a fee up front to come out as opposed to making me sell. Why? Because he knows that I don't sell as good, but he also knows that I'm a kick-ass speaker and that I'm well worth it and that he's never going to get a complaint and people are going to come up at the end and go, Topher was amazing. He knows that I'm his go-to guy for starting his events on a high note or ending them on a high note. So he takes his best speakers and he puts them at the beginning or at the end or a little bit of both because he wants to really make sure that he sandwiches in all of the speakers at his events with some really powerful presentations to where people love him. I've got a great reputation in that mark in that area of that. But I also have a reputation, by the way, for doing really aggressive campaigns to get people into the seats. So Dan, for example, knows that when he books me to speak at his event, for the entire time that he's promoting his event, my Facebook page is going to be plastered with his promotions. I'm going to go out of my way. I'm going to make funny commercials. I'm going to create some viral videos that get a lot of traffic to his site and get people to buy tickets. So that's my reputation, and that's what gives me a certain level of value with that. So you have to be aware of all of those types of things. There was a question by Sandy a little while ago that said, how much on average will a promoter be willing to pay for a speaker? It has everything to do with this stuff here, Sandy. They might not be willing to pay you anything because they know that you're going to be selling and make a lot more money that way. They might be willing to, for example, Dan knows that he's willing to pay me a certain amount of money because he wants me to be the guy who kicks things off or finishes things or keeps the momentum going. And that's worth a certain premium to him because he knows that I can, for my speaking fee, I'm going to bring in that many in sales anyway. So it's almost a wash. So I think the question is, instead of how much on average will a promoter be willing to pay for a speaker, it's really this. What a promoter is going to be asking is, will I be able to get a return on investment? If somebody's willing to pay me $50,000 to get up and speak, what they want to know is, will Topher be able to bring me $50,000 in sales? If he can bring me at least $50,000 in sales and I break even, that's a wash. That's a good deal. But they don't want to pay more and get less. They always want to pay less and get more. So I think that's really the direction you should focus on, Sandy. And know that. Bianca, I've already addressed your question. Well, I haven't addressed it. Her question was, most promoters lately require a speaker to give them 50% of their sales at the events. Would I be more likely to get booked if I offer them even more than 50%? So I didn't address that specifically. First off, Bianca, you are a fool if you give them 50%, so you would not want to give them more than 50%. But to answer your question literally, yeah, that would probably be more attractive. If you call up a promoter and you say, I'm going to give you 75% of my sales, they're probably going to look at you. But they're also going to look at you with a little bit of disrespect, going, why are they giving away so much money? What are they, an idiot? So you have to be aware of the fact that that's going to mar your reputation a little bit. Think about this. If a promoter calls me up and says, we want to do a 50-50 split, and say, I'm sorry, I don't do 50-50 splits, and here's why, and I don't need your business that way, all of a sudden now that actually increases my reputation. And they go, what does this guy know that the other speakers don't know? So what I would say is, Bianca, you desperately need to listen to my webinar called How to Negotiate with Promoters, because I'll tell you right now, if you ever accept a 50-50 deal blanket like that, you're probably a fool. Not in every situation, but most of them. Let's see here. A couple of other questions I saw. There was something about, I don't remember who asked, there's something about, are there databases or something of promoters in various countries? Not to my knowledge. It's a small enough world that you can do it through networking, but there probably is some aspect of that. There's probably more databases of like speaking and booking agents and things like that. But to my knowledge, no, there's not a database of promoters in various countries. You don't really need that. You just simply go to Google, hit personal development, look at all the things in your city that are coming up, and then go to those websites, find out who's promoting it, and boom, there you go. You can probably build a list of 20 to 50 promoters pretty quickly just by doing a Google search. Let's see here. Other questions. I had somebody, Alex made a comment, I'm a member of your Bulletproof Speaker training, enjoying it very much. Thank you. Well, thank you, Alex. I'll make sure I pay you for that endorsement a little bit later. Let's see here. What else? Let's just keep going here. So with regard to the reputation, by the way, you also have to look at your attitude towards selling. Are you the kind of person who loves the sale or hates it? If you are the kind of person who hates to sell, you need to make sure that you learn a strategy that supports that. If you're the kind of person who loves to sell, then you need to learn a strategy that supports that as well. I will tell you right now, if you're the person who has any kind of issue with selling from the stage, if you like to be a speaker versus a salesperson, if you want to just get up and motivate people and give them a message, but you don't feel comfortable or don't like having to go out and here's my sales pitch and you're going to get some steak knives and here's the daily special, you're going to have a hard time if you learn from a speaker who specializes in that area. And I see this happen all the time, by the way, where speakers or ambitious speakers go and get trained by people who are really good at selling, and they can't ever figure out why they're not as good at it as well. And it's because that's just not your forte. There's different business models for different types of speakers. So ask yourself, do you love the sale or do you hate it? And if you love the sale, well, then you need to be trained by somebody who also loves the sale and is good at it. If you hate it, then you need to be trained by somebody who has created that model of success as well. I think that's probably a pretty good thing. Let's talk about that, by the way, because that's actually one of the reasons why people don't want to pay you to speak. One of the reasons why promoters will not want to pay you to speak is because you don't know how to sell. So even if you suck at selling, I have news for you. You have to come to grips with it. There are times where you're going to need to learn how to sell. This is not a webinar on how to sell from the stage. We're going to cover that later. We have a webinar for that as well because those are specific problems and we want to give you a very specific answer for it. But you do need to come to grips with it to some degree. The world's best speakers, the ones that you guys all admire and respect the most, those people, by the way, are great at selling on stage. So if you want to be like them, you have to learn to come to grips with that and learn how to sell from the stage. So it is an important aspect. There's actually 4 emotions that you need to have your audience feel at any given time in order to get them to buy a product. And if you don't get them to feel those 4 emotions, they probably won't buy. We actually have a separate webinar for that. I know it kind of sounds like I'm pitching my other webinars, but hey, they're all free and you need to get to them all anyway. You can't don't expect to go to one webinar and become the next Tony Robbins, right? It's just not going to happen. So the first thing is you don't know how to sell. There's another reason, by the way, and this is one that I want to talk about a little bit here, which is why people won't pay you to speak. And the other reason why people won't pay you to speak is because you suck as a speaker. Now, this one nobody likes to hear. And the funny thing is I always tell people, when they start asking me about my business, they go, oh, that's got to be a pretty easy business, pretty cool, lucrative business, teaching people how to speak. And I go, no, it's actually, in retrospect, had I known what I know now, I may have picked another niche. And the reason for that is I found that to train professional speakers how to be professional speakers, or to train amateur speakers how to become professional, or whatever you want to say, there's one big challenge with that. And is that, you know what is this? I've never met a speaker who doesn't think they're a great speaker. Every time I ask somebody, hey, how are your speaking skills? They go, oh, I'm great. I'm amazing. I'm fantastic, right? And I think the reason for that is because in order to become a professional speaker, you do have to have a bit of an ego. I mean, let's face it, we got to have a little bit of an ego to think that it's worth having people pay us to tell us their opinions or our opinions. So it's interesting that the people oftentimes who need to be trained as a speaker oftentimes already think they're a great speaker. I'll share with you a personal story. Last year at my legacy speaker training, I had a professional comedian by the name of John Heffron come to the event. Now, this guy has been a professional comedian for the past 20 years. In America, he won NBC's The Last Comic Standing, which is kind of like, for those of you who are listening international, it's like your American Idol or your Australian Idol or your X Factor. It's a show where comedians get on, there's judges, the audience in America, we all call in to vote for our favorite comedian. This is the guy who won that, all right? And he came to my legacy speaker training. And it was so funny because he had a lot of, his fellow comedians and stuff kind of poking fun at him, like, why are you going to a speaker training, dude? You're a professional speaker already. But he has a great attitude. He says that the reason why I won Last Comic Standing is because I go to programs like this. I'm constantly developing and enriching my knowledge base and learning new strategies and tactics. So he has a really cool attitude for that. Well, he has some friends here in Tampa that are also comedians, and he says, you really need to go to this program. I'm going to it. You should go. And their attitude was, why do I need to go? I'm already a great comedian kind of attitude. Now, I'm putting words in their mouth. They probably never actually said those phrases. But their motivation to pay me to help them become a professional speaker wasn't there because they already thought they were great as is. Well, just last month, John and I do a program now where we actually go into corporations and we teach executives how to give entertaining presentations. He works on the comedy side, I work on the platform skills side, and we were filming a promo video. So John called up his buddies here locally and said, listen, I know you don't need this, but we really need people in the audience. We want you to come in and sit in and help us with our video. So they came not because they wanted advice on how to speak. They just came because they were helping out a friend. Well, once they got here, then they started getting some feedback from me and from John, and they also realized how much there really is to learn. So I guess I'm telling you this story is because if you're sitting there thinking that you don't need to be trained on how to speak, you're probably the person who needs it the most. It's a false level of arrogance. You know, it's funny. People always ask me, how do I get booked by a promoter? How do I get booked by a promoter? And I always ask them one question. I say, how are your speaking skills? To which they always respond, I'm great. I'm an amazing speaker. People love my crowds. They always give me great compliments. And then I say, really? You know, if you're that great, why aren't promoters calling you? Think about that. You're on this webinar right now trying to figure out how to get promoters to call you back. Even some of these questions, how do I get a promoter to call me back? How do I get them? Well, listen, why should you even be having to call them? If you're as good as you think you are, don't you think they'd be calling you? So I know this sounds a little bit harsh, but you might want to really ask yourself, you know, have you taken the time to be trained as a speaker, as a professional speaker? Are you aware of the nuance? Are you aware of the details? Please do not kid yourself and think that just because you've seen professional speakers and you've taken copious notes and you can say the same things that they say means that you're a great speaker. I see this fallacy all the time with startup speakers. They go look at somebody like a Tony Robbins or a Bob Proctor or a T. Harv Eker or a Wayne Dyer or a Deepak Chopra. They go see these people. They get inspired by them. They take all their notes. They basically steal all their content and their intellectual property. And then they repeat back like a parrot to their audiences all of the same thing. And they can't figure out why they're not as popular. Well, I'll tell you why. And I'm going to use Tony Robbins as a great example because I see people probably fail in their modeling of him more than in any other. The classic example is I see speakers who want to be the next Tony Robbins. They go to his events and they love the dancing. They love the back rubs. They love all the fun exercises because it's like a rock concert. And so what they do is they go, I'm going to have dancers on stage just like Tony Robbins does. I'm going to do dancing and all this. And they have all these ambitions of being just like Tony Robbins. They're going to do a smaller version of his event with the loud music and all this kind of stuff. And then the people come into their event. They got the dancers up on stage. They're doing all the dancing around. And they're loving it. They're up on stage going, this is amazing. This is fun. And they're clapping and dancing and having a great time. But the audience isn't quite digging it. They're not really into it. And they can't figure out why their audience doesn't jump in and participate as much as Tony Robbins' audience does. And I'm going to tell you why right now. The reason for that is because these speakers are what I call parrots in the business. And a parrot is somebody who just repeats what they've heard without understanding what they say. That's what a parrot does, right? It's been trained that if they make a certain sound, it gets them a cracker. Well, these speakers have been trained that if they say something, it gets them an applaud. There's difference here. Here's the thing. The reason why Tony Robbins' audience, he can get 30,000 people in a stadium to buy into dancing and jumping around like a goofball is because he spends about 2 hours prepping them on why that's important. So what happens is these parrot speakers, they get up and they steal the little bits and the little bobs from all the speakers that they like, and then they put those bits and bobs together in their own program. But what they don't realize is that the reason why they loved that bit so well was because of the bob that came before it. And they didn't take the time to model the bob, they just threw in the bit, and now they're not getting the biggest result. So please, no delusions of grandeur here, by the way. If promoters aren't interested in you, you need to increase your skills as a speaker. You need to make sure that when you get up there, you can make an impact, which makes an actual impact in a good way. Folks, listen, here's the thing. Let me give you an example of this. I want you to think about the person that you admire the most in this business. Maybe it's Tony Robbins. Maybe it's an Andy Harrington. Maybe it's a Bob Proctor or a Wayne Dyer or I don't know who. It can be anybody. I don't care. All right. Just sit for a moment and think of the one person in this business who's inspired you to get into the business. The one person that, man, when you heard them speak, they took your life to the next level. They inspired you and it really made you really moved. All right, I want you to think about that person right now and think about how it would make you feel if you did a presentation and somebody after that presentation came up to you and they said that you reminded them of the person that you idolize, right? So for example, if it's a Tony Robbins, how would it feel if somebody came up and said to you, wow, you know what, you remind me a lot of Tony Robbins? Or if it's a Bob Proctor, they came up and said, hey, wow, you really remind me a lot of Bob Proctor. If you're sitting there right now and imagining how great it would feel to have somebody come up to you and tell you that you remind them of the speaker that you admire the most, then you have a problem. You're not a professional speaker. You're a parrot. If that is a compliment to you, there's a death rattle right there in the business. Because I'll tell you what, by the way, I never want somebody coming up to me and telling me that I remind them of a Tony Robbins or a Wayne Dyer or a Deepak Chopra or a T. Harv Eker or a Bob Proctor or a Zig Ziglar or any of the greats out there. I don't want anybody coming up to me and saying, you remind me of so-and-so. You know what I want? I want people to come up and say, I've never heard that before. That was something that was so original, I can't even compare you to anybody else. That is a compliment as a professional speaker. You never want to be compared to somebody else, right? So think about that. In my opinion, if you're trying to be like another speaker, in my opinion, you suck as a speaker because you're not a speaker, you're a parrot. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but folks, here's the thing. If you want a promoter to book you and you're trying to be like somebody else, why wouldn't the promoter just call to somebody else? They probably are. So it's all about finding yourself, your own voice, and finding a way to become original. I'm going to give you an example. I saw a comment a moment ago from a person that said something about they'd been in the business for 10 years and they've been struggling to get people, and they can get 10 to 15, but their message needs to be heard by more, and they have strategies for boosting. So I don't remember who that was, but whoever that was that typed that question, my question for you is, what's so original about your message? Like, to me, a death rattle is my message needs to be heard by more. Why? Why does it need to be heard by the world? Maybe you should just find one group of the world and change them, because that's what the biggest change makers are doing in the world right now. They're not trying to change the world. They're trying to change a certain percentage of the population. Okay, I'm seeing it come through right now. So basically, Serenity, I apologize. Serenity, I should have remembered that name. You're a life coach and a peak performance strategist, but not your typical life coach. You focus on helping people overcome specific roadblocks related to childhood trauma and programs to help them overcome these blockages so they can live an unlimited future. This is going to sound really harsh, Serenity, but you are your average life coach. You are the typical life coach. That's what you just said. Sounds like everything I hear from every life coach that's out there, or a speaker who's trying to do generic personal development. So the biggest thing that I could share with you, and I know that you're probably not going to like to hear this, but you're fooling yourself to think that that's an original concept. Now, maybe the way you do it is original, but the way you've delivered it just now is not original. And that sounds almost like a parrot, just trying to duplicate and repeat the same thing. You really want to tune into my 10 biggest blunders that professional speakers make, because you've just committed one of them, okay? So I'm not trying to take anything away from your Serenity. I'm sure you have a great program. I'm sure you produce great results with people. And yet you have to find a way to deliver it in such a unique way that people can't compare you to other people. Because based on what you just said there, I can compare you to everybody, all right, that's in this business. So you need to find a way to get that original voice. Which, by the way, we're actually, let me think here. We're getting pretty close to the end of the hour. So I've got to kind of not wrap it up, but I want to move on. So there's two more things that I want to talk about. We promised you that there was a way for you guys to get my Mental Game of Life product for free. And there's also the question and answer. I've been doing a lot of Q&A all the way through the program anyway, but I want to get to that to where I'm just answering questions. But let's go on to this real quickly. So here's the opportunity that we have for you in order for you to get my program, which is normally $760, and get it for free here today. I have two opportunities for you here on the plate today. The first opportunity is my program called Legacy Speaker Training. I'm not going to talk about this in great detail, but I will just say this. If you are committed to becoming the best you can be as a professional speaker. And to me, what that means is this. If you're the kind of person who wants to be able to work normal hours, leave work around 5 or 6 p.m. every night, and go home knowing that your calendar is filled with speaking engagements, all of your bills are paid, and most importantly, there's money left over in the bank, then Legacy Speaker Training is for you. It is a full-on one-year program. It starts with 7 days of immersion training with regard to the best speaking skills out there. And by the way, the most advanced ones, the most current ones. If you come to this program, you're not going to learn how to get up and do dancing and whoa claps and raise your hand and say I and how many. In my opinion, by the way, that's all outdated. It works great for the people who made it famous, but the new speakers of tomorrow are not going to be up there. They're getting people to raise their hand and buying like lemmings to everything. So it's more sophisticated than that. There's a challenge with the Legacy Speaker Training, by the way. It is $20,000, and it's worth every single penny because it's extremely thorough. It's literally about helping you to create a career, not just give you a piece of paper that says you've been trained as a speaker. And that is a challenge for a lot of people. I realize that. A lot of people want to attend Legacy, but they can't afford the price tag. So we've come up with a solution. The solution is what I want to talk to you about here today. The solution is called Bulletproof Speaker Training Membership Site. It is the program that I've created for people who would really like to maybe go to Legacy, but right now that's a little bit of a budget for them, outside of their budget. Sorry, that's a price tag a little bit outside of their budget. So what Bulletproof Speaker Training is a way for you to be trained by me directly, where you can have interaction with me as well directly, but at a much affordable price. How much is the price? Well, here's the way I like to put it in perspective. If you've liked the information I've shared with you here today, and you're the kind of person who sits there and thinks, you know what, if I lived in Tampa, Florida, I'd like to actually take Topher out for dinner once a month just to pick his brain. And if you'd be willing to take me out for dinner once a month and pick my brain, then Bulletproof Speaker Training is for you. If you've listened to this and thought, what a pompous jerk, I don't want his opinion, it's clearly not for you. But if you do like what I've said, if you've liked the information, then I think Bulletproof would be a great program for you. And it's about the cost of a dinner. That's why I use that comparison. By the way, I'm a cheap date. It's not an expensive dinner. It's a cheap dinner. At most, it's a moderate dinner. How much is it? It's $47 a month. So I think for you to take me out to dinner and us sit down, you'd be spending more than $47. Well, this is even better, by the way. And the reason why it's better is because, number one, I'm not distracted by my food, because I'm going to order sweet potatoes and I'm going to be all distracted by the beauty of the sweet potato. Here, you get my full undivided attention inside the Bulletproof Speaker Training. It is my baby. I'm on this website probably 3 to 4 times a day answering questions that people have there. And you have direct communication to me through the email and the comment section where I respond, usually at the most within a 24-hour period. I will always respond to every single question that's inside there. So it's $47 a month. So let me give you just a real quick insight as to what you get for that $47 a month. And then we'll move on to the Q&A part. So first off, it is a membership designed for specifically for professional speakers. So this is not for people who just want to get okay with their platform skills. It's for people who want to make a career out of speaking, because we don't cover just platform skills. We cover the business aspect. We cover the software and the hardware aspect. We cover all aspects of becoming a professional speaker. And here's why it's powerful. It's powerful because it's a membership that was also designed specifically by professional speakers, not just by myself, but by other people that I admire and respect in this business as well. And we put our brains together and said, what are the things that speakers of tomorrow need to know today in order to match their goals and hit what they want to hit? So what does it work? Well, here's how it looks. By the way, this is actually a screenshot from what happens when you log in. And one thing I'll point out, by the way, which is really cool about Bulletproof Speaker Training, is that I'm a real big proponent that if you want me to have your money, I want it. And if you don't, I don't want it. So unlike a lot of membership sites that try to hide their cancellation process, I've actually gone to the liberty of taking, and it's the third thing down there where it says membership information. You can just click on that and it gives you step-by-step, well, it's not even step-by-step. It gives you the one-step instruction on how to cancel. So I've not hidden the cancellation process anywhere in it. It's very simple to cancel. You can just go there, you can click, you can also scroll to the bottom of every single page, click the terms and conditions. There's a hot link right in there. You click that, you click one button, you cancel it. It sends you an email to confirm that, because nowadays you got to have double opt-in and double opt-out. But it's that simple. It's very quick and simple. So if you ever do get to the point where you're like, I don't want to be a member anymore, great, just click the button, click cancel, and it's done. Yeah, so it's real easy there. But basically, here's what happens. We have quite a few things inside the membership. We have a thing called Speaker Secrets, a thing called Bulletproof Training Videos, Bulletproof Mentoring, Legacy Mentoring, and Venue Review. Now, I'm going to talk about each one of these things specifically so you know what it is. The first thing, Speaker Secrets, is my popular ebook called The Professional Speaking Secrets of Topher Morrison. Now, this is a free ebook, by the way. So some of you probably have already had it. You're probably already on, and that's how you heard about this webinar, is you subscribe to the ebook. It's free. So why am I talking about a free product that's inside the paid product? Well, there's a reason for that. Inside the free version of this ebook, there's products that you can purchase, and they're not a lot. I mean, they're like $4.95, I think, is the cheapest thing, and maybe $47 is the most expensive thing. Now, when you're a member inside the paid membership, all of the things that are for sale inside the ebook from Topher Morrison Incorporated that are related to being a speaker, they're all free inside it. Now, inside the ebook, yes, there are times where I endorse other people's programs or products. You don't get those for free. I think there's one thing in there that I talk about which is not speaker related that I sell. That's not for free because it's like $500 or something. But for all of the speaker related tools and tips and tricks and stuff that we have in there, they're all free inside the paid membership site. So it's actually cheaper to become a member than it would be to have the free ebook and buy all of the product, which is kind of a cool deal. So it's each week, basically the way it works is you get a new chapter, highlight one important facet of the speaking business. So as your knowledge base grows, so does the book. And what's really cool is I've written these chapters in very short order because I understand that you're busy. So it's going to take you probably no more than 6 minutes to read any of these chapters. And what's really cool is we send you an email every single week that says, hey, a new chapter's been released. Here's the estimated reading time. Here's the topic. So you don't even have to log in if the topic doesn't inspire you. You can just put it off or blow it off until next week I send you another email, which is a really cool support aspect. We also have another thing called the Bulletproof Training videos. These are what I consider to be really the meat of the program, and each one of these videos is worth $47 at least on each one. So each week a new video is released. I'm going to cover topics from presentation skills to marketing and business strategies to really cool speaker, like what I call gizmos and gadgets, like tools of the trade that you need, from clickers to projectors to software, all that kind of stuff. To the microphone that I'm using right now to do this webinar. You name it, I'm going to talk about it all. And then also how to stay healthy as a speaker. You know, 24 years in the speaking business, by the way, and I'm still fit, healthy, I'm not overweight. So I really think that I can give you some good tips on how to make sure that when you're traveling and speaking all over the place, you maintain your level of health, both emotionally and physically as well. So those videos come out each week. Once again, you get an email every week when those gets released saying, hey, a new video has been released. Here's the topic and here's how long it is to watch. So you'll immediately know, am I interested in the topic? Do I have the extra 6 minutes or 7 minutes? Most of these are also fairly short. Some of them are as little as 3 minutes. I think the one is as long as like 20 minutes or something like that. And by the way, with regard to the training videos, they never expire, which is really a cool deal. So for example, when you join a lot of membership sites, if you join the membership site, if you don't watch the video, it expires. This is set up in a way where you constantly have a database built of knowledge and information. So it actually motivates you and inspires you to continue to stay a member, because the longer you stay a member, the bigger the database that you have of all of the different things available to you. So that's kind of a cool little feature. Next thing we have is Bulletproof Mentoring, which is really fun. This was actually a new category created at the recommendation of our current members, which is a monthly contest. You just simply fill out a little tiny comment section on why you'd like to be mentored by me. Each month I pick a new winner. We get on Skype. We videotape the whole hour giving you advice on your business. And then we post that for everybody else to benefit from as well. So that's cool. You have a chance to win a free mentoring session with me every single month. Then we also have another thing called Legacy Mentoring. So this is really cool, by the way. Inside that Legacy package for 20 grand, one of the things that comes with that is bi-weekly mentoring programs, which we record with the whole group. Now, we don't let you partake in those mentoring sessions, but we will let you become a fly on the wall and listen in to the entire mentoring call as well. So we have one of those that we release every single month as well for the first year, which is pretty cool. We also have another thing, which this will be a great tool for you if you're already a professional speaker and you have to book your own venues. If you're just getting into the business, you'll probably rarely use this tab, certainly not appreciate it until you start booking venues. But what we've done is we've gone through the world. We've got USA, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and Indonesia. And inside these countries, we've gone through all of their, well, not all of them, but quite a few. We have over 500 venue reviews. And what a venue review is, it's a way for you to do on-site inspection with the hotel without ever actually having to visit the hotel. So I always tell people, I say, listen, this one thing alone, if you just use the venue reviews to book one hotel throughout the year, you've probably saved yourself the entire membership fee for that whole year, because you don't have to fly out to a venue, you don't have to put yourself up in a hotel or pay for gas or all that kind of crap that goes with it. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't need to do an on-site inspection, I can just book it from the venue, from the website. Well, if you do that, you're a fool. Number one rule in the speaking business is never book a sight unseen. You have to do a live tour. I've actually gone through and taken a live tour for you of over 500 hotels in the world, telling you what I like, what I don't like, and I've done the review from the point of view of a professional speaker. So I'm going to look for things that you probably wouldn't even think about, like what's on the other side of that door? Is it a kitchen? How close are you to the kitchen? What's the floor made of? Is it brick or is it rubber or is it tile? Are you going to hear things that are going whoop, 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 whoop throughout the door? Are there air walls? Are there air walls soundproof? How thick are they? Is there free parking or paid parking? How far of a walk is it from your room to the outside? Because that's going to determine how long of a break you need to take for the smokers in the room. All these different things we've gone through the venue review. So that's a really cool feature that, like I say, if you're a speaker now, you're really going to love and appreciate that one. So there's the deal. It's $47 a month. That's what you get. We're constantly adding new bits of information. And the cool thing, and perhaps the one that I didn't even mention, which I think is probably the best, is that in every one of those sections, there's a place for you to leave a comment or ask a question. And the moment you leave that comment or question, I get notified and then I can respond to that directly. So if you want to have me as a direct coach to help you with your business, would that be worth $47 a month to you? If the answer to that question is yes, then it's a pretty simple decision. All right. So having said that, we talked about the mental game of life thing. All right. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's what's going to happen. If you go to the website now called tophermorrison.com/trial, or click on the link, I'm sure it's probably in the webinar here somewhere. Click on that link. All right. tophermorrison.com/trial. What's going to happen is you're going to be able to go through a really cool thing where you try this out. And when you do that, I'm going to let you get my product called The Mental Game of Life, Bulletproof Strategies to Crush the Competition, which we sell for $767.50 on my website. Now, you don't get the DVDs, by the way. What we've done is we've actually opened up a separate tab inside the Bulletproof Speaker Training. We've taken all these DVDs, we stream them online for you so you can watch them right there on your PC or your iPad or your iPhone or your whatever mobile device you want. All of this stuff works on any mobile device, which is really, really cool. So, provided you have an internet connection, I suppose. If you don't, yeah, good luck. All right, so you can have all these things for free, and that's, like I said, a $767 product. You don't get the physical product, you get it virtually, but it's the same exact product. It's everything you get in there as well. So just for the people who do the trial, you get that as well, which is kind of a cool deal. Now, the one thing that I have done is I want to reward for those of you who have stuck through. I'm not sure that's a real word. So for those of you who have stayed with me for the entire program here, what we do here is we've got a really cool incentive for you, which is a trial incentive to see if this is something that you would be willing to spend $47 a month on. Now, it's not free. I don't believe in that, okay? But I am going to reduce it for you. Now, don't get excited as you see the number drop here. It's not going to go down to like $0 or $1, but I am going to reduce it for you as a special incentive for you listening through this entire program. You can get the entire Bulletproof Speaker Training program and try it out for 30 days for only $5. That's a pretty good deal, right? So $5, try it out. You still get access to the Mental Game of Life DVD program on streaming video. You still get that for the first 30 days. There's no restrictions. You have the exact membership that somebody paying $47 a month would have, but you just get it for $5. And then, by the way, that is only available at that link called tophermorrison.com/trial. If you go to bulletproofspeakertraining.com and you try signing up, you have to pay $47 right up from the get-go. This is the only place where you can get a $5 incentive. So you do want to take advantage of that. $5 for the first month. If you like it, it'll auto renew on your credit card, $47 a month thereafter. And like I said, you can cancel at any time, which is a really cool deal for you. So no commitments, no long-term contracts, nothing like that. Remember, you also get the Mental Game of Life product for free as well. So that is the offer I have for you, and I'd love for you to continue our knowledge base and continue to learn from me. And I know that there's no better way for you to do that at an affordable price than the Bulletproof Speaker Training Program. So go to tophermorrison.com/trial to take advantage of that. And I know that I'm getting close to my hour here. If I didn't answer your questions, by the way, on this webinar, I apologize. I'm going to personally email you with the answer to your question. Let me just look real quickly here. I know I've got my appointment sitting outside the office. I can see him waiting through the window. But let me just see here. I've got, there's a couple things here. We've got, Somebody said, stop selling me so hard, you're losing me. I didn't get on this webinar to be sold to. Well then, AJ, I apologize for that. I think if I had more than you complaining, I might go, oh, I'm selling too hard, but I think I've given you good value. And AJ, you need to realize something, that in the speaking business, you do have to pay your bills just like everybody else does. So at the end of the day, yep, I'm a professional speaker, but at the end of the day, I also have bills and I have to pay them, and I'm running a business. So that's what I do, and I apologize for that. If it's offended you, probably my program is not for you. So you might as well just tune off or stick around and I'll answer a few little questions here. Charles asked a question. He said, every speaker I've listened to is where I want to have, every speaker I've ever listened to that is where I want to be had a mentor. What is the best way to have those people become my mentor? That's a really great question. It really depends upon how big of a person it is that you're trying to get mentored to you, and you can get through them or not. If there's somebody like a Tony Robbins and you want him to mentor you, well, you can do that, but you're going to pay him, I think it's either $100,000 or $250,000 a year to become part of his platinum membership thing, and then he can personally mentor you. So in many situations, those individuals, when they've hit that level, they pay you or you have to pay them for their mentorship. Very rarely are they going to just agree to do it. If you want somebody to just come in and mentor you or take you under their wing, it's unlikely in today's modern business that they're going to just do that out of the kindness of their heart, mainly because we're all the same, right? I mean, you're just like I am. We're all trying to pay our bills, and we're trying to have a life and put a little bit to the side and be able to create a life for ourselves and our family and the people we love. So they need to make money as well. You're probably going to have to pay them. And the more famous they are, the more you're going to have to pay them, I suppose. Now, I will share with you this. What I would suggest, Charles, is find somebody, maybe not so much that you idolize, but somebody who is hitting the level of success that you want to in the level that you want to. See, here's the thing. A lot of people, they look to people like the Brian Tracys, the Mark Victor Hansons, the Tony Robbins, the Bob Proctors, the T. Harv Ekers, and they go, teach me how to become a professional speaker. Mentor me. And that's fine, by the way, and they're great. But what the thing is, those are all celebrity-based speakers. And I will tell you that the marketing strategies for a celebrity-based speaker are entirely different than the marketing strategies for what we call a non-celebrity-based speaker. I'm a non-celebrity-based speaker, so I know how to help non-celebrities become speakers, right? So keep in mind that you're actually getting advice for the area that you want. I think that's going to be pretty powerful. Candace asked, I've asked 3 questions and you've ignored them all. Is this live? Why aren't you answering my questions? Candace, I apologize. It was because your questions were either going to be answered later, or I felt they were too specific, or I just didn't see them. I already covered that up front. Although you could be listening to a rebroadcast, but that would be kind of creepy that I was able to read your question during a rebroadcast. I'd be pretty impressed with my special powers. So yeah, it is live for you. Whether or not it is for the other people listening, I don't know. And I apologize, but Candace, fear not. All of your questions will be answered in email directly by me. So if you have any questions, by the way, we're wrapping up our webinar right now. You need to type in your questions as quickly as you can right now. Get them into the program quickly, because once this webinar shuts off, you won't be able to ask any more questions, and then you're out of luck. So having said that, what I would tell you is go to tophermorrison.com/trial if you're interested in the Bulletproof Speaker Training Program. Give it a shot for $5 for the first month. You can't lose on that one. That's a great deal, and then it'll be $47 a month thereafter. Ask any questions you want right now before we wrap it up, and even though I'm not going to answer it directly on this webinar, I will answer it personally after the webinar is over. You'll get an email within 24 to 48 hours with the answer to your questions from me. And there we go. Man, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening all the way through. Hopefully you've got a lot of great value from this. Please make sure you tune in to the other webinars. Yeah, we'll always be talking about our Bulletproof Speaker Training, but beyond that, we're also going to give you a lot of great value as well. So we have loads of new topics every single week. Make sure you go back to the website at tophermorrison.com, check out what they are. Look into them, get into them, start registering for them. They're all free, and they're all designed to help you really get some of the distinctions to get your business up and running and off the track. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for your attention, for your time. I appreciate you very much. We are running down into the last 10 seconds now. Type your questions quickly. Type whatever questions you want if you want them answered by me personally. Until we meet again on future webinars or over the phone or via the email or maybe even at one of my live trainings. Please take care. Dare to dream and make each day an epic adventure. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. The webinar will end in the next 30 seconds. I'm going to go silent now, let you type any final questions that you have, and you have about 30 seconds left. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.